For this dish, I thought we'd do a fish dish. We're going to use salmon, and this is probably interchangeable with any large piece of fish. So if you've got a sea bass or something that's swordfish would work great, we're going to do it kind of like alla romana, Roman style. And the way to do this is we're going to use some Savoy cabbage, which is this really nice green leaf we got here. It's got a great texture to it, with some prosciutto, and well, let me show you. We're starting off our pan. We'll get it nice and hot. And here I have about a 7 or 8 ounce fillet of salmon. And again, this would work with sea bass or swordfish would work great, tuna would work great. And what we did was we preheat the oven to 350 degrees. At this point now, we're going to take our salmon and get into our hot oil. Because what we want to do is we want to get a sear on the outside. So we'll start off in the hot pan. And let's see, nice and high, okay? Now, some of the other ingredients that we have for this dish, and it sounds kind of weird, but these flavors really go well together. We got the cabbage and prosciutto ham, which we did in a really fine julienne. So again, they're going to cook through and kind of give you like a really nice little bite-sized piece in each bite. We've got some sage, which I love sage. I just love the freshness and the flavor, the smell, the odor. It's just, sage gives you a really great kind of nuance to a dish that you might pick out, but it's not like rosemary. It's not as pungent, or cilantro, where you probably think 50-50 people like it or don't like it. Sage is one of those things that extends the dish, and most people find actually really tasty. Okay, so let's see. We'll start with my spatulas here. I'm going to use my non-stick because I don't want to scratch my pan. So we sear one side. That's a good little trick. You go out and spend all this money on these pans, and then you get a spatula, and use the spatula and you scrape across the bottom, and you scrape your whole pan up, which is kind of silly. So I use the non-stick for that. Okay, we turn it over. Then we're going to add our minced garlic, real fine minced garlic here. Okay, and we're going to add in, as that starts to toast, we're going to add in our Savoy cabbage. I know kind of strange to be adding this lettuce in here, but I got some of the white ends too, some of the white parts. This is going to start to cook down with that garlic. That's really good. I love that. It's one of those things that you don't think about doing. You know, not a lot of folks always think that we're going to take some lettuce and we're going to put it into a dish, but this is going to cook up really nice. So we've got our salmon right here. Okay, well that's going now. I'm going to add my prosciutto ham. We'll kind of mix all that in too. So we got the garlic. We've got that prosciutto that we're going to allow to just kind of steam a little bit here and cook. We got the salmon right in the bottom. At this point now, I've got some fish stock, or you know, if you guys are home and cooking along, and you've got water, you want to use a little water, that'll work fine. Okay, so this is going to keep the fish from sticking. It's going to kind of steam that Savoy cabbage we have in there. And I'm not looking for a real crispy texture on the prosciutto. I want the flavor in there, but it's almost going to come out like semi-raw. It's not going to be crispy, and we're not going to get a lot of that oil out of it. So it's going to kind of almost be as if we're having like on a sandwich. It's going to have that kind of fresh taste to it. Now we add a little bit of sage to this. Oh man, I put maybe a little more sage than you would at home, but I love the sage. A little bit of our fresh tomatoes. Now if you got a can of tomatoes, you want to open them up. If you've got some tomato sauce, you have some tomato sauce at home that you made, that would go really well. And you know I always have tomato sauce in my kitchen. Okay, get that mixed in there. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of butter in our pan. That's going to add a whole nother layer of texture, really richness to this dish. Then on top of my salmon here, I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of breadcrumb and a little bit of parsley. Now remember I said my oven is preheated to 350 degrees, right? We're going to take this, we're going to pop it in for about 10 or 12 minutes. We're going to allow this to cook through. Okay, so we let this salmon cook through for about 10 or 12 minutes. I'm going to pull some of the ingredients out right here. Let's let that drain, because now I got a nice high flame, and we're going to let that sauce reduce down a little bit more, but we'll start with some of that. See that Savoy cabbage and the prosciutto? We got this right in here on the center of our plate. Let that sauce reduce down. There we go. I mean, this is really, really, and I know it sounds kind of strange, but between the prosciutto, the tomatoes that we have in there from that fresh tomato sauce, we've got the salmon going on, we've got the Savoy cabbage. This is a very interesting dish. It's very different, but I'm telling you, it's just packed with a lot of flavor. I'm going to put this right on top. We got the breadcrumbs. Remember we put the breadcrumbs on top, a little bit of that parsley? See how nice that looks? Now let that go for a second. If you wanted to, let me grab another pat of butter. You can add just a little pinch of butter. Before I do that though, let me taste it. Let's see what we got. We take a little bit here. So See, the reason I'm tasting is, it's not bad. Prosciutto's salty normally, but here it doesn't overpower the dish. So we're going to add a little bit of salt, a little bit of fresh ground pepper, and just a little bit of butter on the finish. Okay, and a little bit of butter. Here we go. We're going to stir that in. See what we got now. See, it's all thickening up, it's reducing down. We got a nice sauce coming together here. I probably got enough for a whole other salmon. I could have made 2 out of that, but okay. Grab another spoon here. Grab this guy. We're going to finish this with a little bit more of that sauce. See how it starts to thicken up? Can you shove it out there, Dave? See how we start to thicken up a little bit? I'll spoon a little bit more around the plate. It's really nice, interesting sauce, which has in there the fish stock, the tomatoes, a little bit of butter. And there you go. That one is a simple dish. Actually, if you wanted to, you can even do this in like a big bowl and leave all this broth down the bottom, and you kind of pick through it. I had a great dish like that in Texas at this place called the Green River Grill, where they did something kind of similar, and they had this miso broth, and the whole fish just sat on top of these greens that were sauteed and sat right down the bottom. Some very interesting food they do there. But in the meantime, I think this one is every bit as good and as flavorful and tasty. This one is our pan-seared salmon. It's got just a little bit of parsley and breadcrumb on top, with a little bit of cheese that just kind of gives a little texture, and the whole thing sits on a bed of Savoy cabbage with a little butter, sage, and the prosciutto ham, which is just killer. I love this dish. I think you'd love it too. Check it at home, give it a shot.